here. All right, Andrew, take it away.
All right, so before we start, I need you guys to have a really open mind for this because this is stuff that I'd be surprised if you heard anywhere else. So if you guys want to know what the 1% do, this isn't it. But if you guys want to know what the 0.0000001% do, this is what they do, okay? So in the chat box, go ahead and tell me what you guys feel like power means to you. Just describe it in one word what power means. Motivation, influence, discipline, strength, goals, influence, responsibility, force. All right, so these things, all goals, influence, responsibility, force, how do you get these things? You get these things through fear. And you may have heard people say, conquer your fears or overcome your fears, things like that. But your fears are something that needs to be controlled, not conquered. You can still have extreme confidence and still be fearful. And when you learn to control these fears is when you get power. And even the most confident people out there have the fear of losing, the fear of not performing at their highest level in front of others. Like, it's natural. And the people that learn to control these fears are the people with power. So, for example, like Mike Tyson, he's someone who came to my mind. He's probably the most confident person you could ever picture. Freaking beast. Like, he comes into the ring and you might think like, oh, he's like not scared of anything. But if you listen to some of his interviews, he talks about like he's super scared before going into the ring, and but as he gets closer to the ring, he gets more and more confident, but he's still terrified of losing and getting knocked out. That's just like one example. Also, like Michael Jordan, Kobe, Bryant, they're all terrified of like someone outworking them or being better, somebody being better than them or having more championship rings than them. So also, like, everything you guys probably have heard about fear in the past is incorrect. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a new identity of like what fear really is and how you can use it to help you perform better. So your greatest power will be in your most feared place. So think about when you're the most feared. Did you freeze in that moment, or did you become powerful in that situation? So let's say, for example, like you're falling asleep in class, like you're doing one of those like head nods, or you're doing like the thing where you're like this and something smacks your hand and like you wake up really quick. During that time, you probably have all of a sudden a burst of energy. I know, like, I've woken Jacob up a few times and he jumps up with so much energy. He probably has tons of energy, tons of clarity. And in that fearful moment, his heart was probably pumping. His eyes are super like wide open and he's really aware. That's power. When you're in a fearful situation, your body wakes everything up. That's power. And then you're able to decide what you want to do with this. I know everyone talks about like how they want to soar like eagles. It's like kind of like an animal that people look up to. And mother eagles, they protect their eggs until they hatch with their life. And she also goes out to get food to feed them with her own beak. And the same mother that nurtures and warms them and feeds them. What else do you guys think that she does with that same beak? You can put in the chat. Kills them. Yeah, so she throws them over a cliff. And if the babies could talk, they're probably like, mom, like, what the frick? Like, catch me. But why does she throw them over the cliff? It's so that she can give them power of flight. But what gives them the power of flight is through fear. Fear is what gives them the power of flight. So if you guys want to raise the bar, don't be fearless, but use your greatest attribute of power, which is fear. And you're also never going to find true power and safety. True power comes from being able to throw yourself over that cliff, the cliff of fear. So think about, when's the last time you ever threw yourself over that cliff to deal with that fear? I know many times people throw you over that cliff, but when's the last time that you threw yourself over the cliff? And where do you guys think you get your power from? You can go ahead and put in the chat also. Where do you think you get your power from? C9. Yourself, your anxiety. Proving people wrong, your message, action. You get it from adrenaline. And what releases adrenaline more than anything else is fear. And you get adrenaline through something that causes you to fear. It makes you stronger than you'd normally be. I know I've heard stories of like mothers like lifting cars off of their kids, like if they got hit or something. Like, adrenaline causes people to do insane things, like, and gives them so much strength and power. And fear also Fear makes you work harder, so that way you have more power to receive and also to give. So let's say now, for example, you're running from something like a bear, something you're terrified of. You're going to run a heck of a lot faster than normal, like even like faster probably than you've ever ran in your life. And what happens when you're running faster is you're generating more power. That's another example of that. So when you're busy trying to conquer your fears, you're actually shutting down the one thing that creates the greatest power in your body. So don't conquer your fears, control them. And you can also, so you can use your fear to power yourself, or you can use your fear to power somebody else. So, and I'll touch on that a little bit later, but confront the crisis around you that's causing you to have that fear, because growth comes from fear. So whether it's the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of standing by yourself, that can either give you power or it can take it away. So also go ahead in the chat, tell me, what do you think makes you powerless? Fear, self-doubt, getting in your head, low self-esteem, oh boy, it's a lot, anxiety, complacency. So the thing that makes you powerless is trying to please everybody else. That's what makes you powerless. And pleasing, this is something I saw someone put in the chat actually. Pleasing is leasing your power. The person that you're meant to be and the powers that you're meant to have and share can only be fully developed once you first develop yourself. And so now, just to give you another example of what fear can do for you, think about when you have to, I think we can all relate to this. Think about when you have a test or an exam or like a project and it's like due the next day or finals week. What does fear do for you then? Of course, you're afraid of like, oh, am I going to get a bad grade? Like, I got to pass this test. And fear unlocked your ability to be more creative. It allowed you to be more productive, and it allowed you to be more innovative with your ideas. When you're under pressure to get something done is always when you produce your best work. Now, let's talk a little bit more about fear and anger. So adrenaline is released during both fear and anger. And when you control your fear and your anger, that's when you have uncontrollable power. And when you don't have control over these things, you abuse that power, or that power starts to control you. So let's say when somebody scares you, do you get angry? And how do you control that fear? Because once you learn to control these things, that's when you get power. Now let's talk about motivation. So motivation doesn't work for a lot of people, because when you're motivated by somebody else, the chemical dopamine is released to the brain. And dopamine, that's something that constantly has to get fed to you if you want to stay motivated. It's not like something that lasts for a while. And dopamine is releasing externally, or in other words, somebody is causing it to release. And adrenaline's internal. So adrenaline's a lot more sustainable. And dopamine is external, adrenaline is internal. So one is giving power to somebody else, and the other one is giving power to you. And if you do something because somebody tells you that you can't do it, that means that they have the power. But if your fears motivate you, that means that you have the power. And fear is where your greatest power either comes from or it's taken away from you. So would you rather fear of you making a mistake, or not having the opportunity to make the mistake and giving the opportunity to somebody else? I think a lot of times, sometimes it's the second one. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, but I think we need to reframe our mindset in fear of like, let's take the chance, let's make the mistake, because that's where growth is. So now for example, let's talk about skydiving. When skydiving, the fear of failure, that's something like definitely that's going through probably everybody's mind. Like, who here has all gone skydiving? Like, I know Jacob has. I don't know who else has gone skydiving, but the fear of failure, the fear of heights, like those are things that can empower you. There's no such thing as conquering your fear up there. There's only controlling your fear. And if you don't control the fear, you give the power to everybody else. So the biggest problem up there, I know I haven't personally done it, but I've heard the biggest problem up there is when the person you're strapped to, they're trying to push you out and you're trying to hold back. Now, if you let the person throw you out of the plane, it's considered external motivation, because you're giving them the power and dopamine's released. But now if you throw yourself out of the plane, the chemical releases adrenaline. Now let's talk about managing time and focus. So I know everyone mostly talks about managing time instead of focus. And when your power comes from your own fears, that's when you end up managing your focus. but when your fears are implemented by others is when you start managing your time. I know a lot of people say like fear is an illusion, but fear is not an illusion. It's in your subconscious and it's there to protect you and push you into that power zone which we all have. Everything that you guys need is inside of you. And I know so much people always spend so much time suppressing their fears. But really, like, it's all about just embracing them and controlling them and stepping into that power. So this is kind of like an interesting question, as far as like reframing our mindset. Like, do we play to win or do we play not to lose? And I know a lot of times for myself in swimming, I'd always play to win. But we need to reframe that into playing not to lose, because we can use that fear to boost our performance. And we should use fear the right way and unleash it ourselves instead of having somebody else unleash it for us. And as far as ownership, you can't have ownership over power unless you own up to yourself and your fears. So look for self-power. What comes with the most fear is self-empowerment, which is extreme ownership. You're the one who's keeping yourself in the same place, and you're the one that's feeding yourself things you shouldn't be feeding yourself. And I'm not talking about food, I'm talking about mentally. Now, if somebody pushes you off a cliff, that's them giving you power. And if you push yourself off the cliff, then now you have the power. Fear is either holding you back, or it's when you get somewhere, it keeps you from going back. The fear of messing up either excels you or it freezes you. So a lot of times, like, I know for myself, sometimes I don't, I feel like I've conquered my fears. Like, I know, like, sometimes behind the block when I first started in swimming, I was like, oh, I used to be so nervous. And then I know my sophomore year, I was just kind of like I don't care anymore. I'm not scared and everything. But then I realized these past few, like, since yesterday, I was like, man, like, I don't know if my goals are big enough. If it's not scaring me enough, if I don't have a fear of it. And so we need to raise the bar or find like a new fear, because there's always going to be a new fear. There's plenty of things to fear with everything. I mean, you can use it to push yourself into that greatness and power. So, like, and if you talk to an MMA fighter, let's say there's an MMA fight going on, and he could say like all he wants that he's not afraid. But if he really isn't afraid, you know he's probably going to lose that fight. Like, let's say Henry and Saray are about ready to box. Like, I think, like, let's say Saray's like, oh, I'm not afraid of Henry. Like, I think I could take him. Like, I'm not scared. Like, I think Henry's going to win that fight because Henry's going to be scared of Saray. And so Henry's going to use that power to beat Saray up. I'm just kidding, guys. You're both great. But
I could take him.
And so, like, MJ, he always had the fear of never being good enough. And Kobe always had the fear of someone being better than him or not getting more championships than another person. And they're able to use this to really step into their power. And as far as worry and fear are different things. So worry is what shuts down all chemical reactions in the brain, and it requires outside stimulants. Worry is the thing that keeps you up at night, not fear. And unhealthy fear is what's manifested by worry. Fear is about you, and worry is about everybody else. So just to kind of like wrap up everything I just said, basically just understand your fears, use it as fuel, and learn to control it, and it'll unleash your powers. Thank you.